But I first came to Milton Keynes in 1967 when I was introduced to the parishes that I was going to be in charge of as the Bishop of Oxford's planning officer. I was the first vicar, certainly for Willen and Woolston, under the age of 70 for something like 50 years. And so that gave me a status, a role on the trustees of the almshouses. Local people would have been nominated to be there. That's the role of the trustees. You know, their job was to make sure that people were eligible, and it would have been people connected with the village. They're an ordinary almshouse, like any other almshouse, for local people who, you know, needed some housing after perhaps, you know, losing their house or, you know, just being on their own and needing to move out of a house. Stella Uthwat was the lady of the manor, and her, I think it was cousin, Gerard Uthwat, who became a friend, he was the chairman of the trustees. And I think the only other person who was a trustee, because I can remember there weren't very many people at the meeting, was a man called Richard van der Planck, an architect who lived in the old rectory, which was right next door to the pub. What we were having to decide was how to repair them, because there was no money, there was no endowed money that the trustees had. And they were in a pretty awful condition. The schoolhouse was occupied with a young family. There was only one resident, and she was in hospital, and she was Mrs. Luckock. So that was it. And I went to visit Mrs. Luckock in hospital, and then she died. I don't remember that she ever went back to the house, but I did actually look. I knew what the place was like inside. Very primitive. All I can remember is this one space. You know, there must have been a little kitchen and some lavatory or something, but the impression I got was just one space. The park wasn't very accessible because the tenant in the manor house, you know, really had great difficulty in accepting that people could come and go. And I remember Stella saying to me, she said, "I'm most unfortunate," she agreed. She had a castle in Scotland as well. She said, "I'm most unfortunate. On all my land, the public have a right of access." She owned Great Linford Wood, and there was a gamekeeper who lived in a cottage right at the entrance. People from the village were not allowed in the wood. And I can remember the day the corporation bought the land from Stella Uthwat, we organised a party from the village to go down and crash into the wood. Stella wasn't here most of the time. She just came down to shoot a few pheasants. Not pheasants. She would run around with her great Wellington boots. You know, she was a countrywoman, you know, a stalwart. You know, a bit of a character. I mean, I liked her. You know, you had to, you know, you meet all sorts of people in terms of being a vicar. And you have to get on with everybody. I can always remember her turning up at Willen Vicarage where we lived. And Judith was there, my wife at the time, and Stella sort of knocked at the door and thrust this pair of pheasants into Judith's hand. And Judith said she thought they were still moving. and so I had to learn. So I went down to Bet Morgan, who was farmer's wife at Caldecott Farm on the way to Newport Pagnell, and she taught me how to pluck them and take the innards out. I can still do it, but that was a lesson from Bet.